Officer, look at me. I'm 62 years old. I'm wearing a suit. I'm drinking coffee.
I don't care who you are! On the ground! Now!
You are making a mistake that will follow you for the rest of your life.
Hands where I can see them. Do not test
I'm not testing you, officer. I'm documenting you.
It was 10:15 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. The sun was bright, casting long shadows against the brick facade of the First National Bank. Marcus Thorne, 52 years old, was a man who commanded respect merely by existing. He stood 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his vintage leather bomber jacket. He was a retired Marine Corps major, a man who had led battalions into hell and brought them back. But today, he was just a man in pain. The damp chill of the morning had settled into his bones, specifically into the shattered remnants of his right hip, and the stump where his right leg used to be. He was at the ATM for a reason that was supposed to be joyful. After 5 years of saving from his disability pension and his consulting work, he was finally going to buy the 1968 Pontiac GTO he had been eyeing at a classic car dealership 3 towns over. The seller wanted cash for the deposit. Marcus had called the bank ahead of time to increase his withdrawal limit. He was hurting his phantom limb syndrome, flaring up with a vengeance, causing him to lean heavily against the ATM casing for support. To a casual observer, he looked tired. To Officer Kyle Derrick, he looked like a criminal trying to hide his face and manipulate the machine. Marcus shifted his weight, grimacing as the carbon fiber socket of his prosthetic pinched a nerve cluster. He moved slowly, deliberately. "Officer," Marcus said, keeping his hands' visible palms open, "I have a prosthetic leg. I cannot move as quickly as you want me to. I am a customer here." "I don't care what you are. You're loitering at an ATM and you're blocking the camera view," Derrick barked, closing the distance between them. "We've had reports of skimmers in this area. You fit the description." "Description?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. A middle-aged man withdrawing his own money. A suspect acting suspicious, wearing bulky clothing in 60-degree weather to conceal tools. Derrick retorted, his adrenaline spiking. "Last warning. Get on the ground." Marcus looked at the dirty concrete. He looked at the officer, a man young enough to be his son, with fear and aggression warring behind his eyes. "I cannot get on the ground, son. If I get down there, I can't get back up without help. My leg—" "Stop reaching!" Derrick screamed, though Marcus hadn't moved his hands. The officer's perception was warping reality, turning a static, disabled veteran into an active, deadly threat. This was the moment that would cost the city millions, but right now, it was just 2 men in a parking lot, one holding all the power and the other holding nothing but his dignity. Officer Kyle Derrick was 29 years old and had been on the force for 4 years. In that short time, he had developed a reputation. His sergeant called him proactive. The community liaison called him a liability. Derrick saw himself as a warrior, a sheepdog protecting the flock. He consumed media that told him every interaction was a potential ambush, that hesitation meant death, and that respect was something to be taken, not earned. He patrolled with his windows down, scanning for trouble, often finding it where none existed. His personnel file was a minefield of redacted paragraphs. There were 7 citizen complaints in 4 years, 4 for rudeness, 3 for bias-based profiling. All had been dismissed or resulted in minor counseling. "Officer Derrick needs to work on his bedside manner," a lieutenant had written after Derrick detained a black clergy member for casing a church he actually preached at. But Derrick had never been suspended. The union reps protected him, and the department was short-staffed. They needed bodies in uniforms, even if those bodies were fueled by paranoia. From Derrick's vantage point inside his patrol cruiser minutes earlier, he hadn't seen a decorated war hero. He saw a large black man in a heavy leather jacket standing at an ATM for too long. He saw the man leaning against the machine, shielding the keypad with his body. In Derrick's mind, the bulky jacket was hiding a pry bar or a signal jammer. The leaning wasn't a symptom of chronic pain. It was a tactic to block the CCTV camera. The hesitation to leave was non-compliance. "Control the scene," Derek whispered to himself, repeating the mantra from the academy. But he wasn't controlling anything. He was escalating it. He saw the fidgeting, Marcus adjusting his prosthetic fit, as a pre-assault indicator. "I'm calling it in," Derek had muttered to his radio before exiting the car. "Dispatch show me out at First National. Suspicious male refused to disperse. Possible skimming operation in progress. Copy 1-Adam-12. Need backup. Negative. I got this." He didn't have it. His bias had already written the script. In his head, Marcus was already guilty. The only question was how much force would be required to put him in cuffs. Derek stepped closer, his hand tight on his sidearm. He was looking for a reason, a twitch, a glare, anything that would justify what he wanted to do next. He didn't see the Purple Heart license plate on the Ford truck parked 10 feet away. He didn't see the cane resting against the truck's fender. He only saw a target. "You're making a mistake," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming the voice that had commanded 300 Marines in the Anbar province. "I am Major Marcus Thorne, United States Marine Corps, retired. My identification is in my back pocket. I am going to reach for it slowly." "Do not reach," Derek yelled, his voice cracking. "I don't care who you say you are. You're failing to comply with a lawful order. Turn around and put your hands on the machine." "I told you," Marcus said, his patience thinning, but his discipline holding. "I have a prosthetic right leg. I am an amputee. If I turn and spread my legs, I will fall. I am asking you to call your supervisor." "I am the supervisor right now," Derek shouted. The commotion had drawn attention. Inside the bank, the branch manager, distinct in his cheap suit and anxious expression, hurried to the glass doors. He pushed them open. Officer, that's Major Thorne. He's a premier client. He called ahead for this withdrawal." Derek whipped his head around, his eyes wild. "Back inside, interfere with this investigation, and I'll arrest you for obstruction." The manager froze, hands up. "He's a disabled veteran. Look at his truck." "I said get back inside," Derek screamed, his hand finally clearing his holster and pointing the taser, not the gun yet, at the space between Marcus and the manager. The manager retreated, pulling his phone out to dial 911 on the police. Marcus watched the officer's finger hover near the trigger guard. He recognized the look. He had seen it on green privates in their first firefight, tunnel vision, auditory exclusion panic masked as aggression. "Son," Marcus said softly, "take a breath. You are about to ruin your life." "Don't call me son," Derek spat. "Turn around, now." Marcus sighed. He knew he had to try to comply, or he would be shot. He slowly lifted his hands higher and began to pivot on his left foot, the good one. As he turned, he had to swing his right leg, the prosthetic one, in a wide arc to maintain his balance. The heavy carbon fiber mechanism made a distinct clack-whir sound as the knee joint engaged. To Officer Derek, hyper-focused and looking for a threat, the sudden movement and the mechanical click didn't register as a medical device. It registered as a slide racking on a pistol. "Gun! He's got a gun!" Derek screamed. Derek didn't wait. He holstered the taser and launched himself forward, tackling Marcus from behind. The impact was sickening. Marcus, unable to brace himself, slammed face first into the concrete pavement. His glasses flew off, skittering across the asphalt. The breath left his lungs in a pained grunt, but the real damage was below the waist. The tackle had driven Marcus's prosthetic leg into the ground at an awkward angle. The expensive complex interface where the prosthetic met his residual limb twisted violently. Marcus roared not in anger but in pure, blinding agony. The connection point, scarred tissue from a blast 20 years ago, tore. "Stop fighting! Stop resisting!" Derek shouted, kneeling on Marcus's back, driving his knee into the veteran's spine. He grabbed Marcus's right arm and wrenched it behind his back, forcing the shoulder joint to its limit. "My leg!" Marcus gasped, his face pressed against the grid of the parking lot. "You broke my leg." "Shut up," Derek panted, grabbing the other arm. "Stop reaching for your waistband." A crowd had gathered now. Phones were out. A dozen lenses pointed at the scene. "He's an amputee," a woman screamed from the sidewalk. "He doesn't have a leg." "You're hurting him. He didn't do anything," a man in construction gear yelled, stepping closer. Derek looked up, sweat stinging his eyes. He felt surrounded. "Back up. Everyone, back up." He pressed harder into Marcus's back. He reached down to pat the waistband and felt something hard and metallic on Marcus's right thigh. Gotcha, Derek thought. A weapon. He didn't realize he was gripping the titanium pylon of a $60,000 prosthetic limb. He assumed it was a sawed-off shotgun or a pipe concealed in the pant leg. "I found the weapon," Derek shouted to no one, validating his own delusion. "Suspect is armed." Marcus bit his lip until it bled to keep from screaming again. The pain was white-hot, radiating from his hip stump. "It's a prosthetic," Marcus ground out through clenched teeth. "Check my ID." Derek ignored him. He snapped the cuffs on tight. He ratcheted them down until they bit into the skin. Then he stood up and grabbed Marcus by the collar of his bomber jacket. "Get up." "I can't," Marcus whispered. "You broke the seal. I can't stand." "Don't give me that deadweight crap." Derek hauled upwards. Marcus cried out as he was dragged, his right leg flopping uselessly, the trousers torn, revealing the metal beneath. But Derek was too close, too pumped up to see the metal for what it was. He dragged the veteran 5 feet to the patrol car, opened the back door, and shoved him in. Marcus had to twist his body to fit. The prosthetic leg jammed against the door frame. Derek slammed the door on it twice before kicking the leg inside and forcing the door shut. The interior of the cruiser smelled of stale coffee and plastic. Marcus leaned his head against the cage, sweat pouring down his face. He closed his eyes and began to recite a grounding technique he used during the worst of his PTSD episodes. "Service number 049921, Major Marcus Thorne. Date of birth, November 12th, 1972. Derek jumped into the front seat, breathless. He keyed the radio. "Dispatch 1 in custody. Resisting assault on an officer. Recovered a weapon on his person. Suspect was reaching. En route to booking." "Copy that. Weapons secured." "Negative, it's strapped to his leg inside his pants. I'll strip search him at the station. It felt like a pipe bomb or a sawed-off." In the back seat, Marcus opened his eyes. The pain was making his vision blurry, but his mind was sharpening into a razor. "Officer," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "You have just assaulted a superior officer. You have violated my civil rights, and you are currently transporting a man who needs immediate medical attention for a combat injury." "Save it for the judge, buddy," Derek said, glancing in the rearview mirror. He felt good. He felt righteous. He had taken down a big, dangerous guy. He was going to get a commendation for this. "You think you can intimidate me with that military stolen valor crap? I know a fake when I see one." Marcus didn't speak again. He waited. He knew that the destination was not the end of this story, but the beginning of the officer's end. The drive to the precinct took 10 minutes. When they pulled into the sally port, Derek hauled Marcus out of the car. Marcus collapsed immediately, his right leg unable to support an ounce of weight. Derek cursed and half-dragged, half-carried him into the intake area. "What do we have here, Derek?" The voice belonged to Watch Commander Lieutenant Thomas Miller. Miller was 55, a man who had been a cop since the days of walking beats. He had salt and pepper hair and eyes that missed nothing. He looked at the prisoner, then at the officer. "Refusal to comply, resisting possible weapons charge," Derek said, dropping Marcus onto the intake bench. "He's got something strapped to his leg. Felt like a pipe." Miller walked around the counter. He looked at Marcus. He saw the sweat, the dilated pupils from pain, the expensive leather jacket, and the high and tight haircut that was graying but unmistakable. He looked at the right pant leg, which was torn, revealing the carbon fiber sheen of a C-Leg 4 microprocessor knee. Miller's face went pale. He had a nephew who lost a leg in Afghanistan. He knew exactly what he was looking at. "Derek," Miller said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "Did you search him?" "Just a pat down. He was fighting." Miller knelt in front of Marcus. "Sir, can you hear me?" "Lieutenant," Marcus gritted out. "My wallet, back left pocket." Miller reached in and pulled out a slim leather wallet. He flipped it open. The retired military ID was right there. Major Marcus Thorne, USMC. Miller stood up slowly. He turned to Officer Derek. "Give me your keys." "What?" Derek blinked. "LT, he's got a weapon on his leg. I felt it." "That is a prosthetic limb, you moron!" Miller roared, the sound echoing off the cinder block walls. "You arrested a disabled Marine Major for having a fake leg." The intake room went silent. Other officers stopped what they were doing. Derek's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at Marcus's leg again. The metal, the sensors, the lack of a foot inside the shoe. The realization hit him like a physical blow. "Uncuff him!" Miller ordered, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Uncuff him right now and call EMS. We have an injured prisoner." Derek fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking. He unlocked the cuffs. Marcus brought his hands forward, rubbing his wrists. They were bleeding. "Lieutenant," Marcus said, his voice steady, "I need you to secure the footage from the bank immediately, and I want this officer's body camera seized before he can tamper with it." "Done," Miller said. "Major, I cannot express how sorry I am." "Don't apologize to me," Marcus said, looking past Miller to where Derek stood pale and trembling. "He is the one who needs to worry. I was buying a car. Now I'm going to buy this precinct." The fallout was immediate, but the scale of the disaster didn't truly reveal itself until the footage leaked 3 days later. A bystander video shot from a high angle showed everything. It showed a calm black man standing still. It showed a hysterical officer screaming commands that made no sense. It showed the tackle, the sickening crunch, the crowd screaming, "He's an amputee," while Derek knelt on the veteran's back. The video, titled "Hero Marine Assaulted by Local PD," went viral within hours. It had 10 million views by the time the evening news aired. Internal Affairs launched an investigation, but it was a formality. The evidence was damning. They pulled Derek's old files. The 7 prior complaints were scrutinized by a new independent oversight committee formed in the wake of the public outcry. They found a pattern of contempt of cop arrests cases where Derek arrested people simply for questioning his authority, later dropping the charges. Major Marcus Thorne became the reluctant face of a movement. He didn't want to be on TV. He wanted to be driving his GTO. But he sat for one interview with a national news anchor. He wore his dress blues, the medals on his chest, telling a story of sacrifice that Officer Derek couldn't comprehend. "Major," the anchor asked, "what went through your mind when he tackled you?" "I thought about the young men I lost in Iraq," Marcus said, looking directly into the camera. "I thought about how we fought to give people freedom. And then I thought I survived the Republican Guard and IEDs only to be taken down by a police officer in my own hometown, because he couldn't see past his own bias." The community exploded. The VFW, the American Legion, and the NAACP formed a coalition. They marched on the precinct. They demanded not just Derek's firing, but the resignation of the chief who had allowed Derek to stay on the force, despite the red flags. The bulky jacket excuse was torn apart by military experts who explained that amputees often have trouble regulating body temperature and wear extra layers to cushion the interface between limb and socket. Derek's defense attorney tried to argue qualified immunity, claiming Derek made a reasonable mistake in the heat of the moment. The judge, a former prosecutor, threw it out. "There is nothing reasonable about tackling a man with a cane who is standing still," the judge ruled. "This was not policing. This was assault." 6 months later, the settlement was announced. The city would pay Major Marcus Thorne $6.5 million. It was the largest single-victim settlement in the city's history. but the money was secondary to the terms Marcus insisted upon. Officer Kyle Derrick was fired and decertified, meaning he could never work as a police officer in the state again. The chief of police stepped down. The department was forced to implement mandatory training on interacting with citizens with disabilities, led by wounded veterans. Marcus sat on the porch of his newly renovated house. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the driveway. Parked there, gleaming in midnight blue, was the 1968 Pontiac GTO. He had bought it a week after the settlement check cleared. He walked down the steps, his new prosthetic, a Genium X3, the most advanced leg money could buy, adjusting perfectly to the incline. He ran his hand over the hood of the car. It was cold and smooth. He should have felt triumphant. He had won. He had exposed a bad cop, forced systemic change, and secured his financial future. But as he sat in the driver's seat and turned the key, listening to the engine roar to life, he felt a lingering hollowness. He looked at his wrists. The scars from the handcuffs were faint now, but they were there, just like the scars on his hip, just like the memories of the desert. He realized that for men like him, black men, big men, the uniform they wore in the past offered no shield in the present. To Officer Derrick, the Purple Heart didn't matter. The rank didn't matter. Only the skin and the compliance mattered. Marcus put the car in gear and rolled slowly down the driveway. He would enjoy the ride. He would live his life. But he would never again take his safety for granted, not even at a bank machine on a sunny Tuesday morning. Why do we keep seeing officers who mistake ego for authority? Should police departments be required to have veterans on their review boards for use of force cases? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in justice for our veterans, please hit that like button.